If you enjoy true stories that touch your heart, please subscribe to our channel and press the bell icon so you never miss an incredible tale like this one. The fluorescent lights in the Naval Base security office buzzed. Overhead as Lieutenant Sarah Mitchell sat in the cold metal chair, her hands trembling slightly on the table. Two military police officers stood near the door, their expressions stern and unforgiving. Across from her, Commander Roberts leaned back in his chair, arms crossed, studying her with suspicion that made her stomach turn. Sarah wore the dress whites of a Navy SEAL, her uniform crisp and perfectly pressed. The trident insignia gleamed on her chest, a symbol she had earned through blood, sweat, and tears that most people could never imagine. But now, looking at the faces around her, she realized that nobody in this room believed it belonged there. Commander Roberts slid a folder across the table. Sarah could see photocopies of her service record, but something was wrong. Red stamps marked several pages with the word unverified. Her heart sank as she realized what was happening. Someone had flagged her credentials as fraudulent. The commander spoke with a voice like gravel. He told her that they had received an anonymous tip claiming she was impersonating a Navy SEAL. He said that her records appeared to have inconsistencies. He informed her that impersonating a military officer was a federal crime that carried serious penalties. Sarah felt the walls closing in around her. She tried to explain that there must be a mistake. Her voice cracked as she insisted that she had completed BUD-S training, that she had served on classified missions, that everything in her record was legitimate. But the more she talked, the more skeptical the faces around her became. One of the MPs shifted his weight, his hand moving closer to his sidearm, as if she might be dangerous. The problem was complicated and painful. Sarah had been part of a pilot program that allowed women to attempt SEAL training. The program was so new and so classified that even many people within the Navy did not know it existed. Her missions had been off the books, her service record coded in ways that did not fit the standard database. To someone looking at her file without the proper clearance, it would look exactly like a forgery. Commander Roberts told her that they were going to hold her in detention until they could verify her story. He said it might take days, or even weeks. He warned her that if she was lying, she would face court-martial and prison time. Sarah felt tears burning behind her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. She had survived Hell Week, had jumped from planes at night, had faced enemy fire in places she could never talk about. She would not break now. As the MPs moved forward to escort her to a holding cell, Sarah made one desperate request. She asked them to contact Admiral James Harrison at Naval Special Warfare Command. She said he would verify everything. The commander laughed bitterly and told her that everyone who impersonated SEALs claimed to have friends in high places. He said they would follow proper channels, and she needed to come quietly. The holding cell was small and bare, with concrete walls painted a depressing shade of gray. A single bench ran along one wall, and a tiny window near the ceiling let in a sliver of afternoon sunlight. Sarah sat on the bench, still wearing her uniform, feeling the weight of the trident on her chest, like an anchor dragging her down. She thought about the journey that had brought her here. Growing up, she had watched her older brother prepare for SEAL training. She had seen him transform from a regular guy into someone extraordinary. When he died during a training accident, something inside Sarah had changed forever. She made a promise to herself and to his memory that she would finish what he started. She would become the SEAL he never got to be. The path had been brutal beyond description. When the Navy quietly opened a selection program for female candidates, Sarah was among the first to volunteer. They told her the odds were impossible. They said that no woman had ever completed BUD-S training. They warned her that she would face resistance, prejudice, and physical challenges that would break her body and mind. Sarah had listened to all of it and signed up anyway. She remembered the cold ocean waters during surf torture, when the instructors made them lie in the freezing waves until their lips turned blue and their bodies shook uncontrollably. She remembered the log drills where her team carried telephone poles for miles until their shoulders bled. She remembered Hell Week, when they were allowed only 4 hours of sleep over 5.5 days, when hallucinations became normal and every step felt like walking on broken glass. But she had made it through. She had proven every doubter wrong. She earned her trident alongside her male teammates. And they had accepted her not because she was a woman trying to be a SEAL, but because she was a SEAL, her gender became irrelevant in the face of her capability and determination. Now, sitting in this cell, accused of being a fraud, Sarah felt a rage building inside her that she had to control. She had sacrificed years of her life, had pushed her body beyond limits she did not know existed, had served her country in ways that would never be publicly acknowledged, and some anonymous caller with an agenda had reduced all of that to nothing with a single phone call. Hours passed slowly. Sarah could hear footsteps in the hallway outside, voices discussing her case. Through the small window in the door, she saw officers walking past, some glancing in with curiosity or contempt. She wondered if word was spreading through the base that they had caught someone impersonating a SEAL. The military community was tight, and stolen valor was one of the most despised offenses. Her reputation was being destroyed with every passing minute. As evening approached, a guard brought her a tray of food. He set it down without making eye contact, treating her like a criminal. Sarah stared at the tray, but could not bring herself to eat. Her mind was racing through possibilities. She thought about her teammates who knew the truth. She wondered if any of them had heard about her detention. She hoped that someone, somewhere, was making calls to straighten out this nightmare. The worst part was the helplessness. Sarah was trained to take action, to solve problems, to fight through obstacles. But now, she was trapped in a system that had already judged her guilty. She could only wait and hope that someone would listen. By morning, the news had spread through the naval base like wildfire. Sarah could hear the whispers and conversations outside her cell. Sailors and officers passing by would slow down to peek through the small window, curious to see the woman who had dared to wear the trident without earning it. Some faces showed anger, others showed disappointment, and a few showed something that looked almost like satisfaction. Commander Roberts returned with another officer, a stern woman named Captain Delgado from Naval Criminal Investigative Service. They questioned Sarah for over 2 hours, going through every detail of her training, her assignments, her chain of command. Sarah answered every question truthfully, providing dates, locations, and names. But with each answer, she could see the skepticism growing in their eyes. Captain Delgado pointed out inconsistencies in the official database. She showed Sarah printouts where her training dates did not match standard Bud S-class schedules. She highlighted mission records that appeared to be missing or redacted beyond recognition. She presented evidence that made Sarah look like either an elaborate liar or someone who had hacked into military systems to create a false identity. Sarah tried to explain about the classified program, about the special protocols that governed her service. But without someone from Naval Special Warfare Command to verify her claims, her words sounded desperate and hollow. Captain Delgado told her that they had reached out through official channels, but had not yet received confirmation. She said that people with the clearance to access Sarah's real records were not easy to contact. She implied that Sarah's story was becoming harder too. Believe with each passing hour, the investigation was attracting attention beyond the base. News of a possible stolen valor case involving someone claiming to be a female SEAL was too juicy for the rumor mill to ignore. While the details were supposed to be confidential, leaks were inevitable. Sarah knew that somewhere out there, social media was probably already buzzing with speculation. Her name might be protected for now, but that protection would not last if they formally charged her. In the afternoon, Sarah received an unexpected visitor. A young lieutenant named Marcus Chen asked to speak with her. When the guard led him into a small conference room, Marcus looked uncomfortable but determined. He told Sarah that he had heard about her detention. He said that he remembered her from a joint training exercise 2 years ago. He recalled that she had been introduced as part of a special warfare unit, though the details had been vague. He wanted her to know that at least one person believed her story might be true. Sarah felt tears threatening again, but this time from gratitude rather than despair. Marcus said he had tried to speak up to his superiors, but nobody wanted to listen to a junior officer defending someone accused of such a serious crime. He risked his own reputation just by coming to see her. Before he left, he promised he would keep trying to find someone who could verify her service. That evening brought a new development that made everything worse. Commander Roberts returned with papers in his hand and a grim expression. He informed Sarah that their investigation had uncovered something troubling. They had found evidence that someone with her name and social security number had been working as a civilian contractor during the same time period she claimed to be in SEAL training. The dates overlapped impossibly. Either the records were completely corrupted, or Sarah had stolen someone's identity to create her false military persona. Sarah felt the floor drop out from under her. She realized that someone had not just made a false report about her. Someone had actively sabotaged her records, had planted false information designed to destroy her credibility completely. This was not a simple misunderstanding or a bureaucratic error. This was a calculated attack, and she had no idea who was behind it or why they wanted to ruin her. The third day of detention began with Sarah at her lowest point. She had barely slept, her uniform was wrinkled, and the constant stress was taking its toll. She knew that formal charges would be filed soon. Once that happened, the machinery of military justice would grind forward, and proving her innocence would become exponentially harder. Her career would be over, her reputation destroyed. She might face years in prison for a crime she did not commit. Commander Roberts came to her cell mid-morning with news that made her heart sink further. He said they were preparing to transfer her to the brig at a larger facility where she would await court-martial. He told her that the evidence against her was substantial and that she should consider getting a lawyer. His tone had shifted from suspicious to almost pitying, as if he had seen enough frauds to recognize when someone was caught. Sarah asked one more time if they had contacted Admiral Harrison. Roberts sighed and said they had sent multiple requests through proper channels, but had received no response. He suggested that perhaps the Admiral Sarah claimed to know did not actually exist, or did not know her, and was simply a name she had pulled from a directory to sound credible, as the MPs prepared to escort her out for transfer. A commotion erupted in the hallway outside. Sarah heard raised voices, the sound of hurried footsteps, and what seemed like multiple people arriving at once. Commander Roberts stepped out of the cell, looking annoyed at the interruption. Through the open door, Sarah heard a voice that made her freeze. The voice was deep, commanding, and unmistakable. Admiral James Harrison was demanding to know where Lieutenant Mitchell was being held. Sarah heard Roberts stammering, clearly caught off guard by the arrival of such a high-ranking officer without warning. The Admiral did not sound like he was asking for permission or following protocol. He sounded like a man who had traveled a long distance very quickly and was not in the mood for bureaucratic delays. Within moments, Admiral Harrison strode into view. He was a tall man in his 60s, with silver hair and a chest full of ribbons that spoke of a distinguished career. His face was set in an expression of controlled fury. Behind him were two other officers from Naval Special Warfare Command, both looking equally serious. The Admiral's eyes swept the room until they landed on Sarah, and for just a moment, his expression softened with something like relief. Commander Roberts tried to explain the situation, stumbling over his words as he detailed the investigation and the evidence they had compiled. Admiral Harrison listened for exactly 30 seconds before holding up his hand for silence. He told Roberts that this detention was over immediately. He said that Lieutenant Mitchell was under his direct command, and that her service record was classified at a level Roberts did not have clearance to access. He made it clear that this was not a request, but an order. Roberts looked stunned. He protested that the evidence suggested fraud and that they had followed proper procedures. Captain Delgado, who had arrived upon hearing the commotion, tried to present her findings about the conflicting records in the civilian contractor with Sarah's information. The Admiral listened to this with growing impatience. Then Admiral Harrison did something unexpected. He asked everyone except Commander Roberts and Captain Delgado to leave the room. When it was just the four of them plus Sarah, he pulled out his phone and made a call. He spoke briefly, identifying himself with a security code, and then handed the phone to Roberts. The commander listened for a moment, and the color drained from his face. He handed the phone back without saying a word. Admiral Harrison explained that Sarah was part of a program so classified that even mentioning its existence was restricted. He said that her records appeared irregular because they were designed to appear that way to anyone without proper clearance. He revealed that the civilian contractor story was part of her cover identity, planted deliberately to hide her real activities. Every inconsistency that Roberts and Delgado found was actually evidence that the security protocols were working exactly as intended. The room remained silent for a long moment after Admiral Harrison finished speaking. Commander Roberts looked like he wanted the floor to open and swallow him. Captain Delgado stared at her files as if seeing them for the first time. Sarah stood quietly, not daring to feel relief yet. Waiting to see how this would unfold, Admiral Harrison turned to Sarah and asked if she was all right. The simple question, asked with genuine concern, nearly broke through her carefully maintained composure. She nodded, not trusting herself to speak. The Admiral then addressed Roberts and Delgado, explaining that while they had followed procedures, the anonymous tip that started this investigation was itself suspicious and would be traced. He revealed that someone had deliberately tried to expose Sarah's real identity by forcing a situation where her classified records would be examined by people without clearance. The plan had almost worked. If the investigation had continued much longer, if formal charges had been filed, Sarah's cover would have been completely blown. The Admiral made it clear that this was not just about protecting one officer, but about safeguarding operational security that affected ongoing missions. Roberts asked why Sarah had been on the base wearing her uniform if her service was so classified. It was a fair question. Admiral Harrison explained that Sarah had been transitioning between assignments and had stopped at the base for what should have been routine administrative check. Someone who knew her real identity must have seen an opportunity and called in the false report, betting that the base security would react exactly as they did. The Admiral said that 3 other female SEALs existed in the program, though Sarah did not know who they were, and they did not know about each other. The secrecy was designed to protect them from exactly this kind of targeted exposure. Someone with inside knowledge had broken that security, and finding out who would be a priority for naval intelligence. Captain Delgado closed her files and offered Sarah a sincere apology. She said that the evidence had been convincing and that they had been doing their jobs. Sarah appreciated the apology, but could not help feeling bitter about the last 3 days. Her reputation on this base was damaged beyond repair. Every person who had seen her in that cell, every sailor who had whispered about the fake SEAL, would remember her face. Even with the Admiral's intervention, some people would always wonder if the whole thing was a cover dash-up, Admiral Harrison seemed to read her thoughts. He told Sarah that she would be immediately transferred to a new assignment where nobody knew about this incident. He said that the base commander would receive a classified briefing and would ensure that all personnel involved signed non-disclosure agreements. The official record would show that the investigation had been a misunderstanding related to classified activities, with no fault on anyone's part, before they left. Admiral Harrison asked to speak with Sarah privately. The others stepped out, leaving them alone in the small conference room. The Admiral's stern expression finally softened completely. He told Sarah that he had been in a meeting at the Pentagon when word reached him about her detention. He said he had caught the first available flight and driven straight to the base. He apologized for not getting there sooner. Sarah finally allowed herself to show emotion. She thanked him for believing in her and for coming when she needed him. The Admiral told her something she would never forget. He said that she had proven herself 100 times over, that she was one of the finest SEALs he had ever known, and that no one could take that away from her. Not with false reports or bureaucratic confusion or deliberate sabotage, he also gave her difficult news. The program was being evaluated in light of this security breach. There was a possibility that all female SEALs would be pulled from active operations till the leak could be identified and stopped. Sarah felt sick at the thought. After everything she had sacrificed, after proving that women could serve as SEALs, the program might be shut down because someone wanted to destroy her career. Admiral Harrison assured her that he would fight to keep the program alive, but he was honest about the challenges they faced. The incident had exposed vulnerabilities that their enemies could exploit. Trust within the community had been shaken. Some people would use this as evidence that integrating women into SEAL teams created security problems. The fight was far from over. 3 months later, Sarah found herself in a small briefing room at Naval Special Warfare Command headquarters. The investigation into who had leaked her information was still ongoing, but progress had been made. They had traced the anonymous tip to a former Navy officer who had left the service under questionable circumstances. He had connections to several groups opposed to women in combat roles and had somehow obtained classified information about the SEAL program. The man was facing serious federal charges, but the damage he had caused could not be easily undone. Sarah had been reassigned to a training position, working with new SEAL candidates. It was important work, but she missed operational assignments. She missed the adrenaline, the sense of purpose, the feeling of being exactly where she was meant to be. Admiral Harrison had called this meeting personally. When Sarah entered the room, she found him there, along with 2 other people she did not recognize. The Admiral introduced them as members of a congressional oversight committee that had been briefed on the classified program. They wanted to hear Sarah's story directly. For the next hour, Sarah talked about her journey. She described the training, the missions she could discuss, and the recent incident that had nearly destroyed everything. She spoke honestly about the challenges of being a woman in a male-dominated field, but also about how her gender had become irrelevant once she proved herself capable. She talked about her teammates who had accepted her, protected her, and fought alongside her without hesitation. The committee members listened carefully and asked thoughtful questions. They wanted to know if the program should continue, if it was worth the security risks and the cultural challenges. Sarah thought carefully before answering. She said that nothing worthwhile was ever easy. She told them that the military had faced resistance when integrating women into combat roles before, and every time, the women had proven their critics wrong. This was no different. One committee member asked if Sarah regretted her decision to become a SEAL, given everything she had endured. Sarah smiled for the first time in months. She said she would do it all again without hesitation. The trident on her chest was not just a piece of metal. It represented every impossible challenge she had overcome, every limit she had pushed past, every person who had doubted her and been proven wrong. No one could take that away from her, no matter how hard they tried. After the meeting, Admiral Harrison walked Sarah out. He told her that the committee was recommending the program continue with enhanced security measures. More women would get the chance to try out for SEAL training, and their identities would be better protected. He said that Sarah's ordeal, as painful as it had been, had actually helped convince skeptics that these women were worth fighting for. The Admiral also had personal news. He was retiring at the end of the year after 40 years of service. He wanted Sarah to know that she was part of his legacy, one of the accomplishments he was most proud of. He had fought for the program when others said it was impossible. He had defended it when critics said it would fail. And he had seen extraordinary people like Sarah prove that excellence had nothing to do with gender. As Sarah left the building and stepped into the sunshine, she felt something she had not felt since before her detention. She felt hope. The road ahead would still be difficult. There would be more challenges, more people who doubted her, more obstacles to overcome. But she had already proven she could handle anything thrown at her. She thought about her brother, the one who had inspired her journey. She wondered what he would think if he could see her now. She liked to imagine he would be proud. She had taken his dream and made it her own. She had honored his memory in the best way she knew how. By refusing to give up even when everything seemed lost, Sarah climbed into her car and looked at herself in the mirror. The woman staring back had been tested in ways most people could never imagine. She had been broken down and built back up. She had faced her worst nightmare and survived. She was a Navy SEAL, and no one could ever take that away from her. The trident on her chest was real, earned through blood, sweat, and tears. And that truth was worth fighting for, no matter the cost. As she drove away from the headquarters, Sarah made a promise to herself. She would continue serving with everything she had. She would mentor the next generation of women who dared to dream of becoming SEALs. She would prove every single day that she deserved to wear the trident. And someday, when people told stories about the first women to serve as Navy SEALs, they would remember her not as someone who was detained and accused, but as someone who never gave up and never backed down. That was the legacy she would leave behind.